All right, today we're gonna make a quick and easy camber boom.
Starting with the table saw, we're going to take 3/4 inch plywood and rip them into 1 3/4 inch strips. When cutting smaller strips, I like to use a feather board to prevent kickback. The feather board will keep the wood pressed against the fence through the cut. Now to the miter saw. We're going to cut these down to 24-inch lengths. Typically, I would use a stop block system here, but I'm having to redo my miter station to include a new radial arm saw. To speed things up, we're going to cut 2 at a time. I'll also use my CNC machine to drill out my holes. This will ensure that we have exact dimensions on our hole spacing. This is imperative for the arms to be able to articulate and close, as well as the front and back bracket matching precisely. Initially, I was cutting these out on the bandsaw and then headed to the sander, but I realized I wasn't able to be as consistent as I would like. The CNC ensures exact consistency on every cut. Each one of these brackets took about 6 minutes.
Okay, now that we've got everything cut at the CNC, it's time to mock everything up just to make sure that we're getting the articulation that we're looking for. We've got our kind of base piece that's gonna sit on the jig that sits on the French Cleat wall. It's gonna stand like that. And then as you can tell, these things are gonna alternate, right? So if I stand it up, it's gonna look something like that. If you guys can see that. Actually, flip it. It's gonna be like that, right? So each one of these pieces is going to move around. Okay. What we're gonna do, we've got our 5/16 inch bolts, 2.5 inch bolts. We're gonna go ahead and get these all set in. Excellent. And then we've got these black knobs that I bought. I've actually got these on Amazon. I'll put the link in the description. But when I tested it, I actually used some knobs on a couple of the jigs that I have on my, my drill press table, the actual fence. That way I can make repeatable cuts, you know, line things up. The same thing how I do on the router table, where maybe I want to do a plunge cut, start here and end here. So I'll put a piece of wood on each side or stop blocks. So that makes it pretty convenient. All right, so just make sure that we're alternating here. Now the key with the CNC was all of our drill holes are exactly in the right place. Now I did have to take a 5/16 inch bit to bore it out a little bit. The CNC, the bit I used was only an 1/8 inch. So we had to take a 5/16 inch, and that's for the bolts. These to the side. We can always cut another support if we need. Now the big thing to test here is ensure that the knobs are not too close together. This is excellent. Too close together, you wouldn't be able to tighten them all the way down. All right, and we want nice, easy. Now this is just a mock-up, so I am going to put washers down because I'm not too worried about it compressing into the wood. What we're gonna do on the actual legs or extensions themselves, we're gonna put in some threaded inserts. Got those right here, and they're just a little over, oh goodness, just a little over 1/2 inch. So you can tell all the braces are only 1/2 inch. So this would actually go extend past those, and that would not work. So, oh yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for. Gonna go straight up. Straight out. Oh, excellent, excellent. Wow, that actually works surprisingly amazing. That's fantastic. Okay, so now that we've got this mocked up, what we're going to do, we're gonna have to cut a new hole into the extension pieces so that we can insert our threaded inserts. And that way the 5/16 inch bolt will catch, and then it won't go any farther than that, because on the back side, with it spinning around, the bolt can just spin, right? So you may be tightening it, but that bolt's just gonna keep spinning. There's nothing really to stop it and compress it. So ideally, I'd like to make this without having to use springs. And the only way to do that is to get that bolt from turning, right? That bolt has to stop and apply enough pressure by the knob to lock it into place. So we're gonna take all of this apart now that we're pretty happy with it. Woo! And then we'll add our threaded inserts. We'll catch you in a bit. Okay, now that we got the legs and the attachments built, we can go ahead and work on the mounting plate. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make a mounting plate with a French cleat to go on this wall right here. So what I'm really looking for is to be able to get my boom above me to do some kind of top-down shots. Really when I'm doing some detail work or some stuff that maybe I need to zoom in for, but it's kind of hard to get a top-down from a tripod. It just doesn't work that way. So ideally I could mount it here. It'll kind of go over me and then down. So we've got our mounting plate here. What I did, I've got two angles that come out, and I used this on the original build when I had it on the ceiling. So if this is on the wall, right? So if you can see it here, we've got this post that goes down. Now I've seen a lot of people that use an iron pipe, and they'll just get like an adapter and they'll screw it on, and then they'll make the whole contraption move around that. But this whole build is scrap wood, and that's the intention that we're doing. So we're gonna follow that. And I took this piece right here. It actually came from my dust collector. So the Harbor Freight dust collector has a couple of rods that go up to hold the plenum that holds the filter bag on top and the plastic bag on the bottom. It comes out the blower. It has 3 rods that held it up. Well, this is one of them. So you'll see here, this is what attached to the base. So what I did, I went ahead and cut that to size. I attached it from the top, right? Because if it was underneath, you could have a chance it'll fall through, or you have all that weight riding on 2 screws, which I didn't think was gonna be enough. So I actually have it going down, so pulling down through the unit. So I've got that cut to length. I cut a hole just bigger than the pipe. And then this was already kind of cut to size, but kind of matched a similar angle, a little bit more smooth because we're looking for articulation kind of left and right. Now on the back, we've got our French cleat installed. And then what I noticed when this was on the wall and you had your arm out and you're moving the arm back and forth, as soon as it went past 10, 15 degrees, the whole thing wanted to go like that, if you can see it. So what I did, I took a piece of, actually a nice piece, but I took a piece of walnut, I drilled a hole through it, I had a couple threaded inserts, and I've got these 5/16 inch bolts. So when it goes onto the French cleat, I'm gonna use these bolts and just screw it up and clamp it down basically onto the French cleat itself so it doesn't move left or right. So you'll have the weight holding it down on the top of the cleat, and then you'll have pressure coming up from the bottom, and that'll hold it in place. So you'll be able to articulate it left and right, up and down. It won't matter, it's not gonna go anywhere. All right, and now we need a way to attach the arm to the base. So what I ended up doing is I took a couple of strips of 3/4 inch ply, and I'm going to basically sandwich, hug, marry, whatever you wanna call, around our pipe. So I've cut them pretty skinny, about 1.5 inches, and then I've got them just brad nailed to the wood, because once it's together, the bolts are gonna have enough clamping pressure, but I didn't want it too tight because you do want it to be able to actually move around, right? So articulate side to side. So I've got that cut out. I've got holes drilled for it. Now initially you'll see that I had 4 holes here. I had the first holes that came from the drawing, or when I cut it out of the CNC, but the problem there is the knob kind of goes above the wood right there. So I had to bring it down so I had enough room. So let's show you how that goes together, right? So we've got the top and the bottom. We're gonna marry or sandwich these things together. Okay, and I'm using the washers on all of them on the knob side. Now, in this scenario, I do not have the threaded insert into the middle like I do all of the legs. I don't think that's necessarily needed because all we're trying to do is just clamp on that bar. We don't need it to hold tight, right? So that's not holding weight like we would for these. So we just need enough to be able to clamp it down so it's not gonna come off that bar. Okay? So at that point, all you gotta do is put it on the French cleat, and then it's gonna move back and forth. Now granted, I still have to take the bolts and screw them up to sandwich the French cleat, but as of right now, this is exactly how we're gonna build it. So the next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna go and put the legs on, we'll put the whole unit up, and then I'll go ahead and screw in my, my bolts here to clamp it to the French cleat. Okay, now that we've got it attached to the wall, I'm able to move it all the way around left and right. Now you can see when it gets out here, all of that weight is pushing this way, which is the reason we had to have those two 5/16" bolts going to sandwich the French cleat. So this works out really, really well. Now I may have to change this for a sharper angle like I talked about earlier, just so that it can move all the way around side to side. It's not really gonna be that big a deal. This is actually gonna go one run higher on the French cleat, and that's gonna give me more room above my head when I wanna do the top-down shots. Now, speaking of top-down shots, one thing I did not talk about was how I attach the camera. So you'll see right here, we've got this kind of 7 design that mirrors on both sides. What I did is I added a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. It's about 4.5 inches long. I went 2 screws this way and 2 screws this way to sandwich it in. I ran a bolt through it to add the ball head of the camera. So now I can attach the camera, move the camera left and right, but also top down. So once again, when I move this upper run on the French cleat, the whole unit will be above my head, over me, and I can do stuff at the workbench, and you'll see that in a few videos ahead. So pretty excited how it's taking place. Now I do need to take this apart. I'm gonna sand it all down, I'm gonna paint it, and then we're gonna put it back on the wall. It's pretty long, which the whole unit will get out pretty far. From this point right here, it'll get over my table saw, so I can do a top down of what I'm cutting on the table saw, or I'll be able to go all the way over to my CNC machine. Now before I had to use a tripod right in front of the CNC machine, but I do have an older X-Carve, and I do like to be able to be right by the carving when it starts and when it ends, so having the tripod kind of gets in my way. So I really wanted the arm to extend all the way over to the CNC whenever I'm doing all of my projects. So now time to take this apart, sand it down and paint it. We'll catch you soon. All right, all done. Got it painted a black and very bright green. I think it looks pretty cool against the black French cleat wall, as well as the High Five logo. Maybe not your favorite color, but I think it looks rad. I can see it. I'm not worried about hitting my head. I know where it's at all times. I've got the ball head mounted for my shots kind of all around the place, as well as top down, which is what I'm most excited for. The reason I built this is for the top down shots at the workbench, as well as the table saw. So this one wraps it up. We'll see you later.